What's up, everybody? It's Dan, Binder Boneyard, coming at you from the new office. You may hear some noise, background noise. I got, the heater running, and my black truck is actually outside idling. I will admit, like I said in some other podcasts, I'm not the best about maintenance. I let my own stuff go way too far before I handle anything. And apparently, through some leaks and some maintenance on the black truck, I had gotten my ratio of coolant to water off, and it's been very cold here. And if you recall, the black truck has a radiator in the back. So I've got long pipes, aluminum pipes underneath the truck, and then they join to the radiator in the back. Well, the radiator froze on me when I was out and about because the cooling efficiency on that is so good that, even being back there, it froze. So the engine, of course, stayed running and got pretty hot. I shut it down before anything bad happened, but you could crawl under the truck and touch the pipes, and the farther away you got from the motor, the colder and colder it got. And then I have a drain on the radiator, and I opened that and nothing came out. She was frozen. So anyways, I pulled it in the shop last night, let it thaw out, put a heater under it, defrosted it, drained some water out, put a couple gallons of straight green back in there, and now I'm circulating it. You probably hear it out there idling, maybe. But anyways, that's my bad. I should have done a better job of keeping an eye on the antifreeze in there, but I did not. And so luckily it didn't break anything. I did not come into the shop to a lake or anything like that. So I will circulate some green, and then I'll probably drain a little bit more out of it, and then add another gallon of green. The cooling system on that truck carries 12 gallons of coolant. So there's a lot of fluid in there. But anyways, so I apologize for any background noise, but I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following along. You guys are great. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening to this on YouTube, please like it. Please share it. I hope you're subscribing. Every little bit helps. Trying to get the channel engagement up. You may have noticed there's more videos coming out, a lot more reels or shorts, I guess they're called. Things like that. So if you want to support us, please head over to Patreon. You can become a Patreon donator. It's, as little as $2 a month. It's all helpful. You can subscribe on Instagram. You want to be an Instagram subscriber, that's $2 a month. The Patreon, you can donate as much as you like. I have a few listeners that donate $20 a month, which, you spread that out over a whole month. That's only like 80 cents a day. So, it sounds like a lot to some people, but you break it down, it's not bad, especially when the amount of value that you're getting out of these podcasts, it's every little bit helps. So, please, if you feel like donating on Patreon or Instagram, very grateful. You can also purchase all the parts I talk about from our website, www.thebinderboneyard.com. Or from our eBay store, which is the same name. Just go to eBay and search Binder Boneyard, and you will find all kinds of good products there. Lots of NOS, lots of stuff, and a lot of the stuff that isn't international based. A lot of truck stuff. There's antiques. We got books, literature, all kinds of stuff on the eBay store as well. So please don't hesitate to look at the eBay store if you're shopping for something different make, whatever. So I wanted to talk about something. There's a lot of recurring themes in international ownership that I see over and over again. And it's, I guess you break it down to the term is efficiency. People complain about terrible gas mileage or lack of power or constant wearing out of parts, or things like that. And people forget, a lot of guys don't understand that it is a symphony of systems that all have to work together for the most efficient operation. I mean, you can have, a 500 horsepower engine, but if you have the wrong gears for the wrong size tires with a slippy transmission, it doesn't matter. You're not putting the power to the ground efficiently enough. And so you have to consider a lot of different options, or a lot of different variables. What tire size, what axle gear, what transmission you're running, what engine you're running, and then accessories on the vehicle. It's amazing what a roof rack with a tent on it will do to kill top speed and fuel mileage. It's devastating. So you gotta keep that in mind with your build. If you're running a 4-cylinder, if you have an 80 with a 152, you will have a 3-speed, and you will have, Dana 27 front, Dana 44 rear. Maybe you have an 800 with a 152. So you might have a Dana 30 front and a Dana 44 rear. You're going to have 427 gears. Those are the standard option. Some trucks had 488s, and so I recommend that because of limited horsepower, you need to have your gearing and tire size dead on. So, if you're running, the stock tire was like 30 inches and you had 427 gears. And then guys are doing lifts and body lifts and they put 33s on, and then it's even doggier than it already was. So, you're going to want those 488s to go with the 33s. Then you'll get back a little bit of that takeoff power and some between shift power, because you only have a 3-speed, and it's hard to, you do that thing where you're in second gear and you're just screaming, and then you grab third and you just lugs and bogs down and, needs momentum to get going again. So, it's things like that. It's examples like that, so if you have gearing to match your tire size, then the next step is engine efficiency. I always start with gearing first. Tire size to axle gears is always the most important. And then you look at your transmission. Most of you guys are running stock type stuff, so you're going to be the 1-to-1 final drive. And so if you have an overdrive, let's say you put an NV 4500, or you're running a T34 5-speed, or you have a LS conversion and you're running a 4L80 or something like that, then your gearing option can change a little bit more. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but I'm going to just speak to the stalker guys with the 1-to-1 final drive. So if you have your 80 or 800, you've got your gearing correct for the tire size. And then you look at engine efficiency. And I know I beat this horse, but if you've listened a lot, you've heard this over and over again, but it just keeps coming up. Efficiency. Make sure that your ignition system is as best it can be. Good plugs, good wires, good cap, good rotor, maybe a Pertronix igniter with a hot coil. Those go a long ways towards making the fuel burn better. Make sure that your carburetor is clean and jetted correctly and flowing the correct amount of fuel, and that you don't have vacuum leaks, you don't have intake manifold issues. Make sure that your air filter is big enough. Do not run one of those tiny little 4-inch round chrome housing ones that you can buy from Summit. They do not move enough air. They are a restriction and they will choke you down. You're better off doing, like a 10-inch or 12-inch round, or take the factory oil bath and you gut it, and then you install a paper, generic air cleaner, air filter that fits inside of your gutted oil bath. There's lots of videos on YouTube about how to convert your oil bath to a paper filter. It takes some tools and it takes some work. So if you don't have the ability, then you need to look at some of those other ones. But the 10-inch ones are good. But yeah, your air restriction will kill it. Then you start getting into engine drag. So, take the mechanical fan off and put an electric fan on with a thermostatic switch that only comes on when it hits, 190 degrees. So there's some drag that you'll take off the engine. Same with electric fuel pump. I'm not a fan of them as much, but, electric fuel pump with a regulator so you don't overpower the carb will take some drag off of the engine. Make sure you're running the correct lubrication in the transmission and transfer case. Too heavy an oil will slow you down as well. Too light of an oil will create wear and problems, but too heavy will create a drag and slow you down. Things like that. And then again, aerodynamics, you don't have something on the roof. You don't have a bunch of junk slowing you down in the air. But that's really about all you can do to pick up efficiency, other than starting to lighten the truck, removing things. Don't run your back seat if you don't have to. Don't run spare tire and carrier if you don't have to. Keep your tools and your fluids to a minimum. Run the correct size battery. You don't need a group 31 when a group 24 is what is supposed to be in there. Things like that. You shave some weight wherever you can. And that's about the best you can do for efficiency on those little trucks. You get into the V8s, a V8 powered 800, for example, with a 4-speed. It's the same thing. You're looking at efficiency. Is ignition good? Is the carburation good? Is your exhaust? Do you have dual exhaust? Free flowing dual exhaust will pick you up a couple of horsepowers. Make sure your gearing is right. Make sure your U-joints are lubricated. Make sure that your wheel bearings are set correctly and free spin. Make sure that your brakes aren't dragging. That happens. You'd be surprised how many people say, oh, my drum brakes were so bad, I just adjusted them up and now they work great. Well, they work great because they're dragging and, they will just grab the drum. So make sure that your, brakes are adjusted right. Make sure your tire pressure is correct. You want to run that 32 to 35 pounds. That's normally what you run on your street tires. If you're running a truck or travelette or, something with some load range ease and their max PSI is 80, and if you're towing, you want to run at 80. If you're just daily driving it, you want to run them at like 40. But, just keep things like that in mind. The V8 trucks are, 500 pounds heavier than the 4-cylinder truck. So again, there's a weight difference, and that can cost you some mileage as well. When we drove Josie Scout to Vegas and back with the 266 and the 4-speed and the 373s and the 31-inch tires, we averaged like 14 miles to the gallon. I'm super happy with that. Her 2005 Xterra that she drives in the wintertime gets 16 miles to the gallon. So, that was great. We're super happy with that. And again, we were we're a little more efficient. We have a soft top, not the hard top, so that we saved 100 pounds there. We don't have a spare tire on the outside of the truck or carrier. We had the spare on the inside. Things like that. We have, a little bit more efficiency. I don't run an electric fan on the V8s because I worry about heat, and it's nice having that mechanical fan. But, there are electric fan options out there that could probably keep up with a good shroud and whatnot. But then remember, when the fans come on, they create an electrical draw, and that drags the alternator down. And then the alternator creates resistance, and, there you are again. So what's more efficient, the mechanical fan spinning or the alternator dragging it down? Now there is the fan clutch option, which, releases and lets the fan kind of freewheel. And then when the engine heats up, then the fan will lock up and pull air. And then when it cools down, it loosens back up. There's those as well. I'm not sure if you can fit one of those on an 800, but I know on the Scout 2s and the D series they fit and they work pretty well. Anyway, yeah. Just think about efficiency. If you're in a Scout 2, which, majority of the people that are out there, they're Scout 2s. So, it's the same game, watch that, your driving style. So, some Scouts came with crazy tall gears, like 307s and 331s. If you have three 307s and you've put a 4-inch lift and are running 33s and an automatic, you are probably getting terrible mileage. If you're city driving and short drives, that ratio, that setup might be perfect if you're commuting from, LA to Sacramento every day or something like that. That's probably a good ratio, good setup. But any city driving, any town, any four-wheeling, anything like that is absolutely terrible. So you need to think about your driving situation, thinking about your usage. If you're just running your Scout 2 on the weekends with no top, just to get to the beach or go get ice cream or go, short drives, whatever, then you would want to consider like 373s and 33s or even 410s and 33s, because then the engine doesn't have to work as hard to get going. The automatic transmission doesn't have to slip as much to get you going. And again, transmission choice is important because automatics are not as efficient as manuals. I know they're easier to drive, nicer to drive. I love my Allison in my black truck, but again, it has a lockup converter. So there's a period in there where it does not slip at all. It pretty much becomes a manual at that point. So, if you're looking for efficiency, you may want to consider a manual transmission. And then again, with the Scout 2s, watch your accessories. If you're running air conditioning, of course, you're going to get worse mileage and lower horsepower. The air conditioner pumps, they rob like 3 or 4 horsepower from your engine, and 3 or 4 horsepower is noticeable, especially when you only have 120 horsepower at the wheels to begin with. It's all noticeable. And again, look at if you got a roof rack, if you've got stuff up there, if you've got, a whip antenna with a flag on it, like stuff like that will lower your efficiency. So it's a dance. It's a game that you play and you juggle the variables to get the correct, to get the best efficiency model you can. And then that brings me into the aftermarket stuff. If you're running an LS that's going to have, 300 horsepower and a 4L80 with a lockup converter and overdrive, then your efficiency there can absorb some inefficiencies at the axle and tire. But I still, if you're running that an LS setup, then, it's 410s and 33s, or even 456 and 33s, or if you're running more of a stock 31, then it's, 410s for sure, because that overdrive of the 4L80 and the lockup converter make those 410s be more like 373s, or even a little taller, And so, and then the efficiency of those engines, because of the fuel injection and the ignition systems and the way that they're made and the amount of power that they put out, it doesn't take a lot of horsepower to push them down the road when you have an efficient drivetrain like that. So, but again, I know some guys with LS swaps that are getting 18 miles a gallon, and I know other guys with LS swaps that are getting 25 miles to the gallon. So again, it depends on the size of the engine, it depends on transmission, gear ratio, and all those coefficients that can create a inefficient operating platform. I think the best setup though is a diesel. The Nissan diesels that came in them stock, especially the NA ones, the naturally aspirated, non-turboed ones, they were absolutely gutless and very hard to drive with any kind of performance back in the day. But they were getting 25 miles to the gallon. I know I had a friend with a turbo 1980 turbo diesel Scout that was factory geared, had 31-inch tires. I think had 354 gears, had a 4-speed. They had done like the elbow eliminator and a different intake on it and some other things to make it a little more efficient. And he swore to God that he got 27 miles to the gallon on a regular basis. We did a Mercedes diesel conversion on a Scout a while back that he is also getting 27 to 30 miles a gallon with a 5-cylinder Mercedes and a Toyota 5-speed. Again, it's all about efficiency and being able to use the power you have and push it down the road. So, like my black truck, it has the DT360 from an international school bus, which is 190 horse and like over 500 foot-pounds. It's got the Allison 5-speed, so it has the overdrive and a lockup converter. And then I'm running 410s with 33-inch tires. That truck gets 20 miles to the gallon empty and like 11 miles to the gallon loaded up to 25,000 pounds. But my top speed, I top out comfortably. Like I don't like to push it any harder than about 75 miles an hour, which I know is slow for some of you guys, especially like the Texas and the Flatlanders. You want to have, 90 as your top out. Okay. Well, I pull a lot. I'm doing heavy loads. And so I like to have the meat of my horsepower at 65, 60. That, even in not overdrive, in fourth gear with the converter locked up at the upper end, I can do, 55. And I like that for pulling the mountains, for pulling the passes and doing all that. So that's where my compromise was. But, at that point, because of what that truck does, my efficiency has gone down because it weighs 8,000 pounds. I got 6 tires on the road. It's got a, flatbed sticking out the sides because it's a dually. Got the winch bumper. I've got stuff that is dragging it down. And to still get 20 miles to the gallon, 19 miles a gallon empty, it says a lot for the efficiency of a diesel engine. It takes a lot to make that work, but yeah. So, if I was going to fantasy build the most efficient, fuel economical, yet powerful and functional truck, or Scout, I should say. I would not go with the 2.8 Cummins. A lot of guys like these new 2.8s. I don't think they have enough power. I think they're 120 horse. They just, driving one, it feels like driving a Scout with a stock 304. They get good mileage, but I think they're a little underpowered in my opinion. So, if I had my options, I would probably run like a 4-cylinder Cummins, like a 4BT, but they're loud and they're obnoxious. So that's a trade-off. You've got to consider that. But the 4B Cummins with some pump work and a turbo and, intercooler and stuff, they have, they're 130 horse but more torque than the 2.8, which torque is what gets a lot of the work done. But 4B with a 5-speed and a good geared axle, Paradena 44s with some 33s, probably run like 373s in that setup. And it would have, power to pull, but top speed on the highway. It would be efficient. And you'd probably get 25 plus miles to the gallon. If I was building a truck or travelette, I am partial to these DT 360s, especially the later, like the 92, like I have. I mean, that's 190 horse. That's, the 12 valve Cumminses didn't reach 190 horse until, mid to late 2000s. Mid to late 90s. And these are all mechanical. The 360s are all mechanical. So, the 12 valves went electronic in 95 or 96. So, sort of electronic, but, the 97 and a halves is when they went to the full electric with the electric injection pump. And those aren't the best either. But, anyway, if I was building a travelette, which I will in the next couple of years, I'm going to build another travelette, and it will be 360 powered with a 6-speed Allison for the double overdrive, and I will retain the 410 gears, and we'll probably still run 33s, minor lift, but that's it. And it'll also be more traditional. The radiator will be in the front, just kind of a more standard build. And it'll probably get better mileage because it won't have a dually bed sticking out the side. It'll be a smooth-sided, fleet side D-Series travelette. So it should get better mileage, probably have a different bumper setup, things like that. But yeah, I would plan on getting 20 plus miles to the gallon with that setup as well. You can do the same thing with a 12 valve Cummins. Get a first gen or early second gen one. Make sure you get a NV 4500. Make sure you transfer all of that Dodge stuff across, the Dodge radiator, Dodge intercooler, Dodge stuff, so that making part store runs is easy. But, you could probably reach a similar number with the 12 valve. It's just not quite as heavy duty as the 360. So it's lighter. So you may get better mileage because, the 12 valve weighs 1,000 pounds dressed out, and a 360 weighs 1,200 pounds dressed out. So, you 200 pounds less means more efficiency going down the road. The Allison probably weighs the same as the NV 4500 when it's all said and done. So, just stuff like that. It's just efficiency and whatever. I think I am going to build a travel all with a 12 valve and a 4500. Eventually I have the parts for that. And I do think I want to build a travel all that's going to be like a real, like, multi-purpose kind of do-all truck. And I know I have a hard time with those kinds of builds because, they're like a Leatherman and they have a tool for everything, but they don't do anything well. They're not great at anything except for pinching your fingers or poking yourself. But, I think a travel all it's small enough and a little lighter than a pickup. But you put a 12 valve in there, which is also lighter, with a 4500 and a 205. And, it'll go down the road nice. It'll be able to tow. I will match the axles to the gears to the tires. And, I think it would be a good all around, like it'd be a good road trip truck. It would be a good overland type truck, a good camp rig, but you could still pull a trailer of decent size. You still get away with a lot of truck type activities, but be travel all. I think that would be a good build for the future. And that's probably where I'm going to go with the future build. But anyway, that was my whole ramblings about efficiency. Hopefully, you learned something. Hopefully picked up an idea or two, or maybe you yelled at your radio and tell me how wrong I am. But anyway, I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks again for following along. I love you all very much. And until next time, I'm Dan, Binder Boneyard.